everyone, I'm Lita Hoffman. I'm CATCO's new artistic director. I'm so glad to be here. Hi everyone, I'm Lita Hoffman. I'm CATCO's new artistic director. I'm so glad to be here and to share this work with all of you. Thanks for joining us for the live stream of Idris Goodwin's Plays Towards an Anti-Racist tomorrow. This afternoon, you'll see all 4 short plays, have a chance to hear from the artists involved, and join a conversation about ways to talk with young people about race. If you're looking for information on today's schedule, you can find it in the description below. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge where we are and how we got here. Every community owes its existence and vitality to the generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making history that led to this moment. Some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hopes of a better life, and some were forcibly brought here against their will. Truth and acknowledgement of these realities are critical to building mutual respect and connection. So today, we begin by acknowledging that in Central Ohio, we are on the traditional homelands of the Shawnee Nation, Miami, Wyandot, and other Indigenous nations who have strong ties to these lands. Today, individuals from a broad range of Indigenous backgrounds call Columbus and Central Ohio home. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the King Arts Complex and the Heart of Protest Initiative, our partners in bringing you these plays. The 4 plays we are sharing with you today are a part of 46 days of artistic protest honoring the 46 years of George Floyd's life. I encourage you to check out the Heart of Protest website to see the incredible work of the many Central Ohio artists and organizations involved in this initiative. And I'd like to thank playwright Idris Goodwin and TYA USA in making these scripts open and available to the public. Thanks for joining us. If you like what you see today, please help us spread the word.
Are you listening?
Uh-huh.
You just press this button and it takes off like just by pressing a button. Cindy has the best toys.
Well, that's great, Sam.
Yeah, so awesome. So awesome. And that's not all. That's not all.
No.
They have a dog and a cat and an iguana. Can you believe that?
And an iguana.
Yep. His name is Ivan. Ivan Iguana. And guess what's the cat's name?
Yeah, that's real nice.
Are you listening?
I am. Yes, I am.
I asked if you could guess the cat's name and you said, "Oh, that's real nice."
I misunderstood you. I'm listening. See, I'm putting my phone down.
The cat's name. Guess.
Furball.
No.
Well,
Obama.
really?
Yep.
That's so cute.
Yeah, because he's half black and half white.
I'm sorry, what?
Some of the cat's fur is black and some is...
Sure, yeah. I get it.
It's so much fun at Cindy's house.
Mm-hmm. How are Cindy's parents towards you?
What do you mean?
How do they treat you?
What do you mean?
Are they nice to you?
course they're nice to me.
Do they ever say anything that makes you feel uncomfortable?
No.
Because you can tell me if they do. Matter of fact, I need you to tell me if they do.
It's okay. We just have fun. Hey, you know what else?
What else?
We had a huge water fight.
Oh, yeah?
It was so cool. Cindy's mom filled this bucket with water balloons and buckets. And you know what else?
What else? What else?
Oh, nothing.
Well, now you got me all curious. Tell me.
Nothing.
Was it water guns? Was it water guns, Sam? Hey, it's okay. I'm not mad.
You're not?
No, I understand. You were just having fun.
It was so much fun.
And when you're at someone else's house, that's fine.
It was so much fun. Cindy has this one that shoots water so far.
Oh, yeah?
So far.
And Cindy knows that when she comes here, we don't do that, right?
I told her that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I told her and her mom and her dad.
What'd they say?
They didn't say anything.
Nothing?
Nope, just did like this.
Well, what'd you say?
I said, we can't play water guns at my house.
Did you say why?
No.
Sam, you have to say why.
I don't know why.
Of course you know why.
I don't know why.
Sam, come on. We have talked about this.
But I don't understand. A water gun is plastic and it's colorful and it's just for water. It's not for real.
But it's a gun.
For water. There are guns that light up and make noise. Guns that are like space alien guns.
You remember when it was our days to bring snacks for your whole class? We had to find something everybody could eat, right?
Yes.
And why did we do that?
Because some kids couldn't have dairy or gluten or meat.
We had to be considerate of other people's allergies. You know what happens when people's allergies act up?
They don't feel good.
Right. They don't feel good. They get sick. Well, guns make me feel a little sick. Even if it's a toy. If it's got a barrel and a trigger, I have a reaction.
What kind?
You know how sometimes you have bad dreams?
Yes.
I have them sometimes in the daytime, even when I'm awake. And when I think of you with guns, even if it's a toy, I have quick bad dreams in my head.
What kind?
Something happens when toys are in the hands of children, especially little brown-skinned children like you.
What happens to them?
Sometimes adults don't know the difference between what's a toy and what's real, even if you're playing. Not everyone's in on the game.
Oh, I have an idea.
What's your idea?
To let everyone know we're just playing. We can sing a song.
What kind of a song?
The water gun song.
How's the water gun song go?
Water gun, it's so fun, it's so fun. Sing with me, sing with me. Water
Water gun, it's so fun, it's so fun.
It's game, it's not real, it's just pretend, it's not real. It's game.
It's just a game, it's not real, it's just pretend, it's not real.
What about that? Maybe that would help?
Maybe. Either way, I like it.
When you get the bad dreams, you can sing that song.
Okay.
Oh, you know what else?
Hey, you know, Obama, the person, not the cat, is more than his colors, right?
Of course.
Okay. Just making sure.
How about nunchucks? Can I have nunchucks in the house?
We'll talk about it.
Oh, you know what else?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Do you want me just to start again? Okay, cool. Sounds good. Hi, everybody. We are back, hoping that we've got sound this time. We're going to go ahead and get started. Let us know in the comments if you can hear us, and if you can't, we will keep working on it. So my name's Lita. I'm CATCO's artistic director. I'm so glad you could join us. And I'm here with Christopher Austin and Simone Dean, who are actors in the Water Gun Song, and Chanel Marie. And I'm hearing that we have sound back, so that's wonderful. Hooray, thank you. Great, I'd love to start off by just asking what in this, working on this production surprised you? I'd love to know, as you started working together as a team, what are things that came up in the rehearsal process you might not have thought of before?
I'll kick it off.
Great.
So one of the things that I was really interested in was finding moments of fun and joy within the script. So discovering those things together, those places was just a fun process. So we used what we had around in everybody's homes as things to bounce off of, and also within the language. Where could we have fun and find joy?
Yeah, I really appreciate that balance of serious topics and joy in the same story. Simone, Christopher, what about you?
You can go ahead, Simone.
And if anyone's got questions for any of these lovely folks, you can put them in the chat on YouTube. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. Go ahead, Simone.
Well, something that I thought was interesting was how you could you have to think about your own experiences. So it's interesting to try to find things where you can relate to something that happened to you in the past.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We tell stories.
Finding the joy was definitely something. The Chanel's a really great director and lets you have fun. Like, she lets you find stuff. She lets you get the nuance and just try to make as three-dimensional experience as you can. And I really enjoyed that. But something for me that I didn't anticipate was actually how emotionally hit I would feel throughout the course of the conversation that this this father and daughter have, and it personally just hit me very deeply.
Yeah, I feel like this is a play that you can watch from an adult perspective, and you can watch from the perspective of a young person, and they're two very different worlds as we think about the framework, for these parent-child conversations, which are happening every day. Simone, we've got a question coming in from the audience who says, "You're an amazing actor. How long have you been training and working as an actor and practicing?"
Well, first of all, thank you, but 4 years I think I've done productions. So yeah, 4 years.
Awesome. And I saw you in the virtual playwriting camp at CATCO this summer. Yeah, you were great in that as well.
Thank
you. Anything any of the three of you want to add about what you hope this play gets people thinking about and talking about as we move forward?
Well, one of the things during our rehearsal process is we talked about there's rules that this parents established to keep their child safe. And as the kid grows up, those rules will probably be changing. More rules to make sure that someone doesn't look at them and profile them in a certain way. But there's so many rules to remember, and they're not foolproof. And people shouldn't have to live their life that way. So that's one of the things to consider, to talk about, or what are the things that we're doing in our lives that make people have to have barriers up so that they're being safe from other people.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Something that I hope that we can take away from this is that I think we have to, how do I say this? We need to be able to openly discuss, absolutely, that we have such a varying degree of experiences growing up in the same city, growing up in the same county, growing up in the same nation. And while we are all united as Americans, many Americans have very different experiences based on where they come from, what their skin color is, their gender, all of these things, their socioeconomic status, all of these things make for a very different experience. So I think we have to give a sense of growing compassion for people in their stories, and that's something that I really appreciated about this story and all the stories that are to follow, is that it destigmatizes and makes the boogeyman lose its power, because able to talk about, we are able to reclaim these stories, make this truth be heard, and let people know, like, this is what so many I had this same talk growing up. Like, this is, I grew up with this with my dad. So we need to hear these stories, and I really hope people listen to these stories and understand that this isn't just a playwright that made up a story. This is a real life occurrence every single day for so many people, and I hope people go forward with a heart of compassion and empathy and really listening to each other.
Simone, we've got one last question for the audience, which is, do you think your character understood how serious her dad was being?
Yeah, so I don't think the character Sam first grasped that this is like a serious conversation. But like when dad says like, what guns make me feel sick, then that's like when Sam feels like, oh yeah, this is a serious conversation that I need to pay attention to.
Great. And a couple more questions are coming in. A lot of people are wondering about working virtually. People really impressed that you can convey this story and this connection between people, even as we're working in this virtual medium. What was that like for you, and how did you figure out, both as actors and directors, how to connect with each other when we're doing it all through screens right now?
So as a director, I wanted it to try to feel as normal as possible. So finding ways to build an ensemble between everybody, also figure out how to play with the screens and work with the space that we have, and also maintain spatial relationship with the actors to be able to move and not feel like we're in a meeting all day like we all mostly are. So finding those ways that we can get up, use our bodies, and still connect was a big part of that.
For me, yeah, it was very different to do this virtually, but the keys and the principles of theater and acting remain the same. So listening, like, you really have to listen and watch, listen, and the presence, being present, all of that is still going to be there. It's all going to be the same. So I definitely relied on that acting toolkit to work on this experience.
Great, Chanel, you've got some fans in the comments who've seen your work as an actor and are really excited to see your work as a director. Do you want to just chat a little bit about taking those skills that you know as an actor and transferring them into the director's seat?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I love as an actor is being able to sit down with the rest of the actors and talk about what we think about the script and what are some of the themes, and break it down. So we still did that. And being able to, again, that relationship building with the ensemble was important too, because we have a parent-child relationship here. So I think Christopher and Simone really did a great job about feeding off of each other, but Christopher was asking questions of Simone kind of like in between scenes and things. So it helped that whole experience. As an actor, I think just, again, digging into those moments where there's meaning behind the word you're saying something, but like, what is the larger thing that someone's trying to convey, and then what are their lives outside of this 10 minutes of time? So figuring those things out with each other, I think, was part of the process that was really enjoyable.
Great. Well, we're about to transfer over to our premiere of Act Free. Anything else that any of you want to add?
This was a lovely experience. Thank you so much, Lita and CATCO, and Chanel. Simone, is so awesome working with everyone.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful that all of you have been able to join this project. And for all of you who just saw this play, Shortly, we're going to be putting these plays as individual YouTube links that can be shared. They are continuing to be free to watch. So if you like the show, if you think that this show is something that somebody in your life or many people in your life should see, please share it on social media, send it to your friends, and let's continue this conversation. So in just a moment, we're going to show you another short play by the same writer, Idris Goodwin, called Act Free. Stay tuned. Thanks so much, everybody.
Guess what?
What?
You won't believe it.
Believe what? Believe what?
I was getting a drink of water and I overheard the higher ups talking about
They
how.
didn't catch you listening to them, did they?
No.
They don't like eavesdroppers.
I know that's right. Seriously.
Listen.
This one time we were in.
Listen. So, it turns out we are free.
What? Free?
Seriously, free.
It's not even funny.
It's no joke. I heard him saying it. And it turns out we've been free for a while, but no one's told us.
How long of a while?
Days, months?
Years.
How was that?
Supposed to be someone who was coming to tell us, but then he got lost or maybe died in quicksand or something.
They just sent one person to tell us.
Well, now there's a bunch of troops coming.
How many troops?
How should I know? All I know is we are free, which means we don't have to do this anymore.
This? What this?
All of this.
So we are free.
Yes,
So I can just walk off right now?
right now.
Nobody will come stop me?
Why would they? You're as free as they are.
Have you talked to the higher ups about this?
They were talking, trying to figure out how to tell everyone.
How to tell us? What's so hard about telling us?
Well, I think they're worried that people, the lower than them but higher than us folk, will be scared because this has been the arrangement for so long, you know? People don't like change.
Amen to that.
Change and mosquitoes.
So when they finally tell us, look surprised because I probably wasn't supposed to say anything.
But if we've been free a while, what's it matter?
What do you mean?
That's a good point. If we've been free this whole time, then we can just go right now.
Well, they probably wouldn't appreciate that. As far as they know, we still think we aren't free. So if you start walking around like you were free, they think, hey, what's the big idea?
But you said it. We are free.
You didn't say that.
Yes, as soon as the higher ups tell us.
That'll make no sense.
Well, none of this makes sense.
What if we've been free even longer than you heard him say we've been free? What if we're the only people thinking they aren't free and everyone else has just been sipping lemonade, going about their day, jolly as a rabbit in May?
I'm pretty sure that hasn't been the case.
But imagine.
So when my family tell us, what are we supposed to do?
Anything we want. Me, I'm gonna get some land and work it.
Work some land? That's what you do now.
How are you even gonna get some land?
You know, there's gotta be some land somewhere nobody's using. What about you?
Not sure. Just be free, I guess. Walk around with my free self. Thinking free thoughts.
Hey, do you think people would change how they treat us now that we're free? What? We're free now.
Not yet, according to you.
In a few moments, they'll be able to read the, I think he called a charter or something.
Sometimes paper ain't nothing but a dead tree.
Who'd you hear that from?
A tree?
You know, you all don't seem excited. I don't understand.
Because for us, what does free even mean? Free to do what? What good is it to be free if you don't have anything? The higher-ups, they became higher-ups because their daddies were higher-ups. My mother wasn't free, her father wasn't free, and his mother wasn't free. And it has now nothing to me but bad memories.
That's a good point.
Get land, grow crops, and sell them to who? You think the people that used to be in charge who do business with someone 5 minutes ago, they thought was no different than the cow?
You do sound like a cow and you snore.
That's not funny.
They gave you more than bad memories. You're smart and you're strong. And that's all you need to build anything. Some wits and some muscle.
That's a good point.
Be quiet. Just a minute ago, you are agreeing with me.
Okay. Here they come.
How should we act?
Just act natural.
What is natural for free people that they wasn't? Here they come.
This is it.
Quiet, y'all.
After this, it'll all be over.
Something tells me it will not be over soon.
Maybe not soon, but it will be over.
Hi, everybody. For those of you just joining us, my name is Lita. I'm CATCO's Artistic Director, and I am joined here with actors Micah Carnes, Carter Miner, and Lennox Price, as well as the Director of Act Free, Patricia Wallace-Winbush. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for putting together this incredible piece.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Hi, everybody. I'm seeing applause coming in the chat. Feel free to add those to the chat, those of you who are watching. If you've got questions for these four lovely folks, you can go ahead and put those there. And I'm going to just start you off with a question from me. I think, this play deals with some really, really big ideas, some really serious ideas. And yet you brought all of this wonderful joy and individuality of these three characters to the piece. And so I'd love to hear from any of you just about how you figured out who these people were, how they interacted with each other, and what made these characters excited to be a part of this world.
I think personally, we were looking, when we started out, Miss Patty and all of us, we sat down and we were like, who are these characters? We tried to figure out who these people were. And we really looked at the dialogue that was going on between them. And it was very well written out who these characters were. You figured out what they believed, what they wanted to believe, and what they decided to not believe. And I think that's something very important that we all figured out very early. I thought it was very good to figure that out so early, so you can know how you want to deliver your lines. I think that really helped the way the dialogue was written.
With my character, she's like sassy, so she doesn't believe Carter's character. The whole story, she doesn't believe him until the end. She's mad that he was right. So, but
And the
I
characters were just called like character kid what, 1, 2, and 3, right? So they didn't even have names. You had to figure out who they were, right? Did any of you make up names for your characters? Or were you just calling by your actor names? Yeah, Lennox, did you? What's your character's name?
in my head sometimes I pictured like the name Keisha.
Cool. Micah,
That's
what
news
about
to
you?
me.
So I thought about it factually because I knew I'm not going to go into it, but I thought about it factually, like the way history actually went about it. So how they were renamed to more American names. So I just thought of Johnny because Johnny's a good name. My middle name's John, and my dad sometimes called Johnny, so I like it.
Cool. Yeah, I think Micah, you bring up a good point, right? That this play is based in history and in a historical moment, and yet the script never talks about the specifics, right? And Patty, right? We didn't, you didn't decide to make it really clear to the audience that this took place in a specific time period. It's just a play about people. At least that's the way I saw it. And so I'm just wondering how you approach that as the director, thinking about how to tell this story.
I did give them some background information as far as, it was 2.5 years before the people in Galveston, Texas knew that they were free. The war had ended in April of 1865, and the people in Galveston wanted to get one more crop in before one more harvest in. So they didn't tell anyone. The really interesting thing, which I didn't know, was that the Emancipation Proclamation and was set out in January of 63. But General Order Number 3, which Carter refers to as some charter or something, stated that the slaves were free, and not only free, but that they were equal. And I think everyone kind of just pushed that aside. It's like, well, we won't tell them that part, because we don't want them to be equal. But there were people who embraced it and have to this day have been very happy to celebrate Juneteenth as the Black Independence Day, if you want to, call it what it is. But you don't want to dig into too deep about, oh, it was so bad, hopefully they'll learn that in school. I hope someone from Columbus Public is listening, and they will learn about Black history in school. I think one of the things that we did learn, Lennox learned how to snap beans, which I was very proud of. And we did talk about the difference between field slaves and house slaves. So, it's, the house slaves could go in the house. The house slaves sometimes had better things, than the field slaves. I'm thinking this group of kids was a mixture of both, house and field. So Carter's character talks about working some land. And Micah says, that's what you do now, man. What's up with that? So these just because I am so proud of these kids. My children, my babies, I'm so proud of them. They did a great job. I know I've talked to you about how sometimes it was like herding cats. I would really like to work with them one-on-one. This is the best cast that I've never met. That's the only way I can say it. I feel like I know them. I know their families now. But I've never met any of these kids. I think I've seen Micah perform, and that's it. I don't know the rest of these kids from
Adam. And everything else is over Zoom. It's it's great. We've got this way of connecting with each other, and these little views into our own houses and things like that. There's a really good question coming from an audience member. wondering, how did our young actors feel about talking about being free and the feeling of not being free? You're right, that's the big idea in this play. How does that resonate with you, both in this historical context and as you think about today?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that still haven't been, there's a lot of things from back then that still haven't been eliminated today. For me, I truly think that we can all do better. Like all of us together, we can all do better to participate and just help and make things better. But, yeah.
I personally, I thought about that question about how the way that we talked about free in this play was, I know it was downplayed from what it actually was. It was in a softer tone. I think that's important for the way it was written, but I think back then they didn't really know what free was. I know my character in the show was explaining what free was, but how did my character really know what that was? Because back then they didn't really know what free was, because they didn't know anything other than to be a slave. They spent all this time working land and working for somebody else, but not getting paid, and they were a slave, and they didn't know anything of free. They didn't know most of them didn't know how to read or write because they weren't taught and they weren't allowed to know how to read or write. And those were things that they didn't understand at the time. And I think, especially now with everything that's going on, you see some things that worry, especially that worry me, because I can look at the world and I can think, oh, I want the world to be better. And you think the answer's so easy, but then for some people the answer's so hard to find. It's just such an easy answer to the problems, and it feels like people are just they have so much pushback, and it's the same pushback that they had back then to make slaves free and then to give people the civil rights that they deserve. And now we have other problems, and it seems like it keeps on changing, and it seems like it's getting better, but then you look at it and it's still bad. And I think that's something that we really need to look at as a nation, is that we keep on making these steps forward, but then we keep on falling back. And I think overall, when I was challenged with having to talk about being free in this scenario in the play, I brought it back to where we are now. And I was like, you can't have optimism that the future's going to be better. I hope my kids have a better world than I live in right now. I'm pretty sure that's what my parents thought. And I hope that's what all you guys think about your children. And I think that is something that I struggled with. I was thinking, how do I apply this to where I am now? And I thought, I'll take it from an optimistic standpoint. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Carter. I think, right, like optimism is what we have right now, and this idea of hope, but also being really realistic, right, about what's happening in the world, where we are. But right, our hope is that together we can figure out, with this optimism, how to make a better world for everybody. Patty, there's a question coming in from another audience member, saying, she's seen you on stage before, and excited to see you directing. How does being an actor affect the way that you approach work as a director, especially with young people? And then what about this piece specifically made you want to direct it?
Oh, wow. I think being an actress helps in understanding what the actors are feeling. I think my biggest problem is stage left, stage right. I always have to do this. Okay, which way is it? Okay. How many times did I do that? Stage, go, yeah, look that way. I read over all the plays, and they were all wonderful. And I chose this one because I felt it was a way to comedically get the point across. Plus, I love working with kids. I know I talk about, oh my God, kids, but I love working with kids. And I wanted at the end of Act 3 when Carter delivers, maybe not soon, but it will be over. It's sort of the way he delivered it, it was almost a question, but not quite. It's like, dating back to 1863, 65, it'll be over. Maybe not soon. It's 2020. We're still dealing, but it will be over. I'm hoping 2021. I'm hoping November 4th, but I don't want to get political. So, I just, I love doing everything theatrical, backstage, in front of the stage, props, everything. I love the whole process. And the more I can get involved and the more my knees hurt, the more I like directing. So, yeah.
Lennox, I'd love to hear from you a little bit. We've got people in the chat asking how you felt playing your role, what you were thinking about when you worked on this play.
So what I was thinking about when I was working on this play, I was thinking about how would it actually be like to be in this situation? Because I'm acting in the situation, but I'm not really in the situation. I've learned about it, but I've never been in it. But when I was doing it, I felt like I was really in it. And the way it made me feel was really kind of cool to be. It felt like I was in an actual history book because it's a story in history, and I was in it. But it was sad because they found out that they were free after he signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah, the next show that we're going to show in just a couple minutes here is called Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth. It's set right now in the contemporary world, and it's about looking back and celebrating this Juneteenth moment. And I think all of you in this play does such a great job about having us think about this moment of celebration where people find out this really wonderful news, this moment of independence, but also the realities around it, right? The fact that they didn't find out for 2.5 years, that we've still had this big question of, are we truly free? And I'm really glad that all of you could share that question with us. Micah, what about you? Anything you want to share about your character, things that you were thinking about?
Well, at the beginning, when I was first auditioning, for each part, I feel like I was going for a different motive for each of them that all combined. And I feel like that is something that in the final draft, it's something that was completely removed. I was focusing on despair and just trying to get your inner sadness to show your lines, but that's not what my character is about. My character is about being optimistic, questioning, being curious. He's very imaginative, definitely. But it was very different than what I had. So going through the process with Miss Patty and everyone else, it really helped me definitely get more into character like that, because what I originally was going for was completely different than what my character has come to be today. So.
Patty, as a director, how do you feel that out? How much of the character comes from the actor? How much comes from the conversations that you have with the performer?
I think in directing, it's a happy marriage. The director comes in with a vision for the whole piece, but as myself as a director, I don't want to stifle what the actors bring, because sometimes they bring some really wonderful things, and these kids, I just love these kids. My biggest problem with this show is that I'm a very tactile director. I could not hug anyone. The most fun we had was after we finished shooting, we had a dance party, and it was like, yeah, okay. But I love working with what was the question? I don't know. No. I get so emotional. I'm so glad I didn't cry though. Usually I start crying when I work with kids because it's like, you're so wonderful. I'm so happy for you. So I took my meds and I'm good.
I think it's so great that this is the only play in the 4-play series that we're sharing today that has an entirely young performer cast.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from any of you as actors. What was that like working on a show that didn't have any adult actors in it?
I think a lot of times when you get to like a certain place, like, you know, you can do school musicals and all that kind of stuff. You can do like school plays, but I think this was different. You know, I didn't know Micah or Lennox before this. I didn't go to school with them. We're all different ages. We're all in different stages of our lives, you know? And I think what was different about it was how we all decided to go into this, you know, we all came in here, we're all different people. And what I found was that, you know, we all brought something different to the table, you know. Micah and Lennox are hilarious. They always crack me up in between when we had to stop and redo things, or when we were just running through lines or in practice. They're hilarious. And I think especially Lennox, she has this childlike wonder to the world that I love. It is hilarious, the things that she thinks up in her mind. And Micah just has this personal, just like comedic glow to him that he just brings out when he's not even trying. And I think that's something that really shows through the different ages that are in here. You know, you can work with adults and sometimes they're more serious about the topics that we're learning about. And I think especially for this play, what we needed were children. You know, the way the lines are written and the way they need to be delivered, we needed that childlike optimistic. And I think that was what was really important to this show.
And so since I'm going through my second childhood, it worked out well for me.
Lennox and Micah, I'd be curious to know, do you think that your characters were older or younger than you are in real life, or the same? Yeah, Lennox, go ahead.
So I think my character is younger, but kind of older. Like, she's my age, but because on rehearsal sometimes Miss Patty said that she's small, but she's mighty. So I was thinking that small would be like 8 or something, and then mighty, well, she's sassy. She doesn't believe him in the whole story halfway.
Micah, what about you?
Honestly, he probably is a 4-year-old. Just gonna say it, because I've been with kids a lot. You know who you are. But
do you have younger siblings?
No. Well, yeah, I have siblings. One of them's here, but they're all in their 30s. One of them has children. So
those are the
children.
kids that you're with?
Yeah, I've dealt with them a long time.
It was fun to see the relationship between the 3 kids, right? Because like sometimes they seemed like they were really good friends, but sometimes they also really got on each other's nerves. Just like real life. Great. Anything you want to add before we go? Because we're just about to start Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth. All right, this has been just a wonderful conversation. Congratulations on putting together this play. For all of you watching out there, thanks for continuing to put your comments in the chat. I encourage all 4 of you to go take a look at that on YouTube once we're done with this conversation. Lots of great fans out there. Act Free will be available on CATCO's website as a standalone piece that you can share with anybody young and old that you think would enjoy these performances and hearing this play. So thank you all so much for joining us. Congratulations, happy opening. And we'll be right back with Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth in just a couple minutes.
Hey, what rhymes with Juneteenth?
Oh, I'm not sure. That's a hard one. Juneteenth. Juneteenth. Juneteenth.
I've been sitting here blank for 10 minutes.
What are you doing?
It's for school. We're supposed to present about our favorite holiday.
I thought your favorite was Halloween.
It is Halloween.
So then why are you asking me how to rhyme Juneteenth?
Because this year for Halloween, I'm going as one of the liberation soldiers in 1865 who went down to Galveston, Texas to deliver the news that the enslaved people were free. Did you know it took 2 years after Emancipation Proclamation?
Wow.
I love soldiers, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be one of the soldiers who marched all the way to Galveston, Texas to deliver the good news to hundreds of enslaved people?
So your report is not about Halloween.
The report is, but the rap will be about Juneteenth.
Your report is about Halloween, and your rap is about Juneteenth.
Exactly. Every kid knows Halloween, but not everybody knows about Juneteenth. So putting it in a rap makes sense, right?
Yes, it does.
I just need to think of a rhyme.
Maybe you could break it in half, rhyme June and then teenth. So moon and
Moon thief?
Juneteenth, moon thief.
But what does liberating enslaved people have to do with stealing the moon?
Good question. What if you just didn't rhyme Juneteenth, but rhyme the words around them?
I thought of that. But if I can find a good rhyme for Juneteenth, more people will remember it. That's what rhymes are for.
True.
Juneteenth.
Let me just check the rhyming website.
There's a rhyming website?
Yep. Okay. Juneteenth.
Is it cheating to use a rhyming website?
No more less than using the dictionary. Nope. Nothing rhymes with Juneteenth.
Ugh.
Well, don't get frustrated. We'll figure it out. You know what?
What?
I rapped a little in middle school.
Really?
Well, once. Some friends and I went as their hip-hop group Arrested Development for Halloween.
Who?
Doesn't matter. We learned one of their songs and performed it for the Halloween school assembly.
You did?
I think your grandma has a video of it somewhere. I was Speech, the lead rapper, and I really had to study his lyrics. And the thing I noticed is that he never actually rhymes the entire word. Tennessee. He just rhymes B and C. For some strange reason it had to be. He got in me to Tennessee. So don't get caught up in trying to find the perfect rhyme. There are lots of ways to make it work.
How?
You tell me. What's Juneteenth?
A celebration.
Of?
Being free.
Free rhymes with a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. So many things. Here, let me change it.
Ready to try it out?
Okay, so pretend I'm in my Liberation Soldier uniform.
Oh my gosh! You look amazing.
Thank you. You all know the story. Divided states, civil wars, bullets and hate. Brother versus brother, slave versus master. A bloody chapter of American disaster. Lincoln had a plan to free every man, woman and girl enslaved in the land. The South said, wait, that's not your call. The war wasn't over, so the news got stalled. 2 years after emancipation, Black people were enslaved. I said Black and not African American because African American has so many syllables.
No problem, keep going.
Okay, let me start back a bit. The South said, wait, that's not your call. The war wasn't over, so the news got stalled. 2 years after emancipation, Black people were enslaved across the nation. They didn't know the South would lose, and soon they'd get the freedom news. Until then, they stayed in danger, waiting on the troops of General Granger. June 19th was the date. Jubilee, Jubilee, let's celebrate. And word it spread across the South, and that's what Juneteenth is about. So from Texas to Tennessee, hip hip hooray, now we're free. June is here, we are free. Celebrate this day for eternity. Yeah. We are free, we are free. June is here, it's a jubilee. When I say June, you say teeth. June, teeth, June, teeth. And one more thing I must say, Juneteenth, my real favorite holiday. I just made that last part up in my head just now.
Yes! Yeah! How subversive!
What's subversive mean?
It means that you are the best kind of liberation soldier. And for that, you get ice cream.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you just tuning in, my name's Lita. I'm CATCO's artistic director, and I am joined here with the wonderful team from the production that you just saw. Actors Preston Hudson, Counterfeit Madison, director Kenny Brown, and stage manager Vivica McCrary. Thanks so much for being here. So everyone's just seen your piece. Thank you so much I'd love to hear from any of you just a little bit about what making this was like in the virtual world, especially of a show involving music. You know, how you know, there were the obvious ways this is different than a regular play, but I'd love to hear what that was like for all of you.
I'm going to start because I have, this is my second show of all time that I've ever been in. So the whole entire thing was new. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Done.
Filming this was very different from anything I've ever done. It was really interesting trying to match all the timing and getting everything done virtually with delays and technical issues. So it was very different.
I think one thing going through this process shows you is just how important it is to be adaptable in any situation or circumstance that you're in, because the way the idea for how this was going to go in the beginning versus the way that it actually ended up working out in the end and the adjustments that we had to make, like those were coming fast and furious. Every rehearsal, it's like, so I got to change something and make this thing work a little bit better, or to play to your strengths a little bit more. And to their credit, you know, everybody who worked on the show was very amenable to shifting gears and shifting directions to make the whole thing work. But I think that's one of the things that we can carry from this process back into the standard world of theater when, you know, when everything is back to normal-ish. is the idea of really maintaining that adaptability and being willing to change on the fly if it's going to be for the good of the production.
Absolutely. Flexibility was a big aspect of this show. But I'm really proud of how we pulled everything together with production team and cast members and director and everything. We all came together. I learned a new platform, learned Zoom, had some struggles, but we worked on through. And it really changes how theater is done. I'm glad that we have this platform to work on because these stories do still need to be told. But yeah, working with Zoom was an experience, but I think I'm better prepared for the future to do it again.
So for all of you watching, if you want to go ahead and add some questions to the chat, then I will, I'm keeping an eye on that on YouTube, and I'll share them with the team here. But I just got a personal question here. I love how this story is a multi-generational story, right? And you've got a young person and an older person working together on creating something, and it's driven by the young person. And so I think the two of you, right, just met to work on this show. What was it like, as director and stage manager and as actors, building that camaraderie and figuring out how to tell this multi-generational story?
Okay. I feel bad because I'm really decisive, so I know my answers really quickly, but I don't want to talk over everyone else, be like, here I am. Anyway, I love teenagers. It's my profession is working with teenagers. I work in admin in a high school. And so I really love working with young people. And I think that too often we get caught into being around people who are exactly our age. And so I think part of the power of this story is a youth-led art piece that's just prodded a little bit by an adult. And it wasn't too much acting on my part because it's what I do a lot. But I love beating Preston. I guess I don't know, I got really lucky in that I am a very new actor, and to work with a team like this where the vibes are it's so good, where it's just really it was magical. And in addition to the text being really beautiful.
Preston, what about you?
I feel like from day one, this group connected really well. And with this strong bond, it was very easy to get things done. Everybody was close together, and it just made everything more enjoyable. And when you enjoy something, it can't go wrong half of the time. So I feel like with everybody being so close together and enjoying each other's company, it just made this production even better.
Awesome. And Preston, we've got a question for you from the audience. The question is, Preston, did you learn anything new about Juneteenth or history during this process? What will you do with what you have learned?
Yes, I did learn a lot of new things. I learned about the people being free in Galveston, Texas, and how that affected many things. And I just learned about the history of these soldiers that marched down to Galveston, Texas to deliver this news to all these enslaved people. And it just changed that. And I feel like learning this really helps me to understand the holiday of Juneteenth more and be able to celebrate it in a different way. And just all this new information that I can spread with other people to give recognition to Juneteenth.
Yeah, Kenny, you and I talked about how Juneteenth 2019 and Juneteenth 2020 took on very different things, especially among folks who aren't Black, learning about what this holiday is, right? And we talked a little bit about that going into this production process. I'd love to hear from you how you feel like this play has a very specific life in this moment in time, as opposed to the life it might have had a year or so ago.
I'll say we definitely had that conversation, and I think that at least the idea or the concept of Juneteenth is more widely. I don't know about if understood is the word, that seems a little strong, but at least recognized. Um, because this year was kind of the year where there were a lot of gestures being made with regards to people of color in this country after all of the horrible things that took place. Um, and I guess while for me, I appreciate all of the kind of smaller gestures that have been made. Hey, Juneteenth is an important thing all of a sudden. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, the impetus for that change happening is a much greater issue than whether or not people are recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday. So I think that as far as this particular show at this moment in time, for me, it's more about the idea of normalizing conversation about things like Juneteenth, about things that are specific to one culture or one group of people, and not having it be this, like kind of mysterious conversation that you have to have, not having it be based upon some type of major event. And you and I talked about this, the idea of having a Tuesday conversation about something with regards to race is something that should be normal. It shouldn't be surprising and it shouldn't be controversial. But for a very long time, all the way up until this moment, it is controversial to have those kinds of conversations, and you run the risk of hurting someone's feelings or stepping on someone's toes, making them feel uncomfortable just by broaching the subject. And I think having this type of show in place, especially in the climate that we're in right now, and having them speak so casually about Juneteenth as a holiday and all the meaning behind it and everything that goes into it, I think is really, really important to take those conversations out of the special box, take them off the giant pedestal, and make them a part of our everyday conversation.
Yeah, at 4:30 today, we're going to have a panel conversation about talking with kids about race, where we can hear some people just sharing kind of their everyday experiences having these conversations. And I'm really glad that this particular play, and Kenny, your really great vision to think about this as a Tuesday conversation, right? Can set this up to, I hope that this series helps people be a little less afraid about bringing up these conversations and talking about these things with their children, with children they know, with your neighbor, right? With everybody. There's a question here in the chat about how does this play inspire the casting crew to continue to elevate Juneteenth? So we talked a little bit about, kind of what happened in the past year with this holiday. Preston, I'm thinking about you, as somebody who learned more of these details working on this play. What do you want to do with that next?
Well, to be completely honest, I'm not really sure, but with what I want to do with it next. But there are some things that I do want to do, just spreading the message and teaching people about it in a comfortable environment where people can understand it instead of just hearing things over again. I feel like with information like this, you can connect with people on different levels so that you can share this knowledge about this amazing holiday that really goes unnoticed. So I feel like with this, I can just elevate that so people can notice Juneteenth more and as the holiday it is.
I wanted to speak to that for knowing about Juneteenth. I know I didn't know about it until I was an adult. It's not taught in our schools. It's not public knowledge. And so acknowledging it, I agree, is a step. Knowing that it exists is part of the battle. But implementing it into your national holidays, I think would also help spread awareness, like we do for July 4th. My birthday is July 11th, so I always thought July 4th was just an early celebration for me. But Juneteenth, I believe, especially in this year, was more impactful and had a lot more meaning for me because of its history and because of it not being really public knowledge.
I think.
You go. You know, Director Kenny, you go first.
I would say for me, in the time that we're living right now, in our social climate and the situation that we're in, it will be interesting for me to see going forward what really is the mindset with regards to Juneteenth and what it stands for. I hate to be the wet blanket guy or the pessimist and look at it and say, I think the reason why there was so much fanfare and awareness given to it now was, almost to kind of placate the people who are, basically in an uprising about how horrible, people have been treated over the course of the past decades, centuries. The question becomes, is this spotlight that's been placed on Juneteenth and on the issues of people of color, are those a moment in time, or is that an actual changing mindset and philosophy in this country going forward? And obviously the jury is still out on that. There's an awful lot to see whether or not the changes that have been made and the awareness that has been brought forth is something that is lasting. But that's one of the things that was at the forefront of my mind while we're working on this. Is I love this, and I hope that more people are educated and enlightened about Juneteenth and they'll go and seek out other information about things that you don't necessarily learn about in school. Don't know why. But the question is, in 2024, let's say the protesting and the rioting has died down and there aren't people, out, yelling and crying and screaming in the streets. Are people still going to care about Juneteenth and what it means and what it represents? Or will this be just a moment in time that was done strictly to kind of address and placate the people who had an issue in 2020?
Yep. So for me, it's not about, I'm a musician and I am an artist and a feeler. I talk about feelings. And so there's a lot of history details like Juneteenth and different books and different articles that I just have not known about and had learned about way later in my life. But for me, it's not about Juneteenth. For me, it's an issue of the heart. Do you care about what people are going through? Do you listen to them when they say, hey, this thing is important to me? Do you have practices to keep those things important to you, even if they're not your issues? How do white Americans and people who aren't Black continue caring about these things, even without the rioting in the street, even without a play that you see? How do you continue to practice, I hate this, but empathy? And I hate it because it's a cute word that people throw around, but it's no, it's hard work. It's work that you do to really continue to care about the suffering of other people, even if the suffering doesn't affect you. And that's what I'm concerned about. And that's what this play is about for me. It's one way. Art does that really well, but how do we continue those practices? I don't think you're a wet blanket, Kenny. I think those are questions that we should be asking. What about 2024? What about 2035? What about 3076? I'm just gonna keep naming higher numbers now. I'm gonna stop. But how do we, for me, it's about how do we continue caring? And it's not only Black people, how do I continue caring about trans people and what they go through if there's no bill to the forefront? How do white people continue caring about my Black body, even outside of a Breonna Taylor case? That's what I'm concerned about. I'm done.
I love that.
I'm gonna be done.
I love that. And I think the thing that you're hitting on there is that I think you said that you talk about feelings a lot. And I think that sometimes people think that feeling bad about something or feeling sorry about something is the goal, and it's not. That's step 2 in the process, step 1 is acknowledging that there's an issue and step 2 is feeling bad about it. But empathy like real empathy is active. It's not a thing that you feel, it's a thing that you act upon. And if you don't make the conscious decision to act upon those feelings, then did you really care to begin with? Did it matter enough to you to make the change to begin with? And I think starting with these kinds of conversations, with the idea of, Juneteenth, and the idea of what is important in, Black culture, in Latino culture, what are these things that are important to them and why, and what can I do to help uplift and support those people actively, not just standing back here and clapping and saying, oh, that was so nice, that was such a good show, thank you guys for doing that, and then going back to your regularly scheduled programming as soon as it's over.
Yes. I'm really glad that our playwright, Idris Goodwin, titled these plays together, Plays Towards an Anti-Racist Tomorrow. And the world needs more anti-racist people. It needs a lot more anti-racist white folks who are putting their bodies and their time and their reputation on the line as we build towards that tomorrow. So we've just got a couple minutes here before we're going to transfer over to our panel conversation on talking to kids about race. So far, if you've just joined us a little bit late today, we've shown 3 different productions. We first showed The Water Gun Song, Act Free, and then Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth, which these folks were all a part of. All 3 of those productions, as well as the production that we are screening at 5:30, will all be available as individual shows tomorrow on the CATCO website. And so I really just ask that you share this work and that they create conversations like the one we've been having, that this is just the beginning. This is definitely not the end of these conversations about what race looks like in America and how all of us play an individual role in building that anti-racist future. So thank you all for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing this beautiful work with us. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the Zoom world, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with you some more in the future. So unless anyone has anything they want to be sure to add before we go off, take a very quick break and come back for the panel conversation, I'll just leave it up to you. Get some great points.
I just want to say thank you to CATCO, to Lita, for everybody who was involved in any of the shows that we're doing here, for the people who are involved in the ongoing Heart of Protest project. I think that these are the kinds of things from the art world and from an artistic standpoint that we need to continue to stand on when it comes to trying to create a better future for, ourselves and for the generations that are to follow. We need to leave this place better than it is right now. We really do. And I think that continuing to push for content like what we're doing here, like what CATCO is doing here, like what King Arts Center is doing, is the way that we're going to, as artists, make our mark to create a better and anti-racist tomorrow. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to everybody who took the opportunity to watch.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye. Thank you. everybody. For those of you just joining us, my name is Lita. I'm CATCO's Artistic Director. Thanks for joining us for this panel conversation about talking with kids about race. So today we have called together three folks who know each other, who have been working together professionally. All three of them are parents. All three of them have been thinking about how we have these conversations, both in the workplace as well as individuals and as people with kids in our lives. So I'm here with Tommy Lewis, who is the president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Brad Ritchie, who's a construction executive, at Turner Construction, as well as Vanessa Jester, who is the community and citizenship manager at Turner Construction. Vanessa, video for some reason isn't working, so she's going to join us as a voice, but you can all see her name and I'm sure you can all hear her. So I'd like to kick off this conversation by just wondering, as people who have been having conversations about race in various aspects of your lives, what are kind of the first things that you like to think about, or the first steps that you like to take when jumping into a conversation?
Tommy, I'll let you kick it off and then.
Sounds good. There are a number of different things and approaches that I take. One is that race is an identifier. There are certain people with different backgrounds who hold their race very close to themselves as one of their leading identifiers, just like their gender or orientation or anything like that. And so I say it's a natural identifier, something that we can see, especially in the US. Secondly, where there are some people who are very open and comfortable about talking about race and others who are less comfortable, just simply bridging the gap from a humanity perspective is very helpful. That sure, we're all part of the human race, but also see me as a Black man, see me as an American, etc. So I think that really the third part is just being comfortable, trying to be more comfortable in sometimes more uncomfortable conversations. But it's a conversation that we're having more and more, and I think people are becoming more and more comfortable with the conversation around race.
For me, it's education. And I spent a lot of time with Tommy recently. I was not raised in a household that we talked about race at all. Race wasn't discussed. It was, you talked about things like you don't see color. I started raising my kids completely wrong by talking about you don't see color. That's not the right, it's not the right avenue to go. Color is a beautiful thing. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what it is that we want to talk about and discuss, and then listen first, be humble. I didn't know what I was talking about when I started down this path working with Tommy and trying to understand racism and what's going on out there in the world. Tommy's educated me quite a bit, and I've done a lot of research and homework on my own. So listen, look for education, and then just focus on loving one another is the three steps that I try to take, and I've tried to do much, much better talking to my kids. I'm here today because I've made a lot of mistakes and have recently learned a lot of what those are. So I feel comfortable talking about it.
Hey guys, and for me, it's more of creating safe spaces, educating, and also being approachable. During times like this, when we're talking about diversity and understanding what's going on in the world, you have to create safe spaces to have those conversations about education, diversity, and hey, what does this mean to you? So I think those are the three steps or three areas that I like to hit on, so that we can have those conversations that Tommy alluded to earlier.
Yeah, thanks. I want to encourage anyone who's watching to put comments or questions for our three panelists in the chat. I'll go ahead and keep an eye on those. But I just want to pick up on a subject I think all of you touched on about, trying to make people feel comfortable or at least natural talking about these conversations, the idea of safe spaces. I know for a lot of people, these conversations are uncomfortable, and we still need to have them. And so what do you do with folks who say, this is uncomfortable and I don't feel safe, and so therefore I want to remove myself from the conversation that we're having?
That's happening more and more, I think, these days because of a number of different things. Obviously, not just the topic of race, but other things that are happening in our workplace, in our school environments, in our social environments and communities, where we as human beings are pressured and we feel uncomfortable. Again, not just about race. So one thing I recommend is when someone says, I don't feel comfortable, it may be an opportunity to begin the dialogue and the conversation there, right? Why? That's from an empathetic perspective, asking the why. How can I help you? Not only feel more comfortable, but help you kind of understand or learn, right? Something that's different. And both Brad and Vanessa spoke to that, I think, very well. And the other thing is that there are people that may not feel comfortable, and it may not always be the other person, the speaker, to make the listener feel comfortable, right? It may not be that responsibility. Now, that's sometimes a tough pill to swallow, but that's a lot of work on the speaker to try to figure out what makes you feel comfortable and maybe suppress my own identity and comfort with talking about the topic of race or racism or inequity. So again, just bridging the gap a little bit about asking the whys, why, or tell me more, to explore that, and then jump into the conversation. Those are my thoughts.
The only piece I disagree with you at all, Tom, is at some point you got to back up.
Yeah.
If they feel uncomfortable, you got to stop the conversation, back away, remove them from the conversation, if you will.
Yeah.
And you're talking about politics. It's also, or race. We've got political issues in the workplace right now that just stop talking about it in those situations. Create the safe space that Vanessa's talking about. And I think we had a conversation at work last week, and it was a discussion about don't force the subject on the individual that's in front of you. Open it up as a dialogue amongst two of you, where that you're in a situation where you want to have the discussion. I think it's a huge difference between forcing it on them and pushing it that direction and accepting the why and challenging that.
I agree.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that because over the last several weeks, a couple of months, I've run into situations where it's best just to, kind of let them kind of think through it themselves, right? They're not ready to have that conversation. They're not ready to, be in a courageous space to share their experiences or what might be going on. So I've found it best to let people come to this somewhat on their own terms. And over the last couple of weeks and months, I've seen that. I've seen people come around and say, hey, are you still willing to talk about that? Or something else came up, and then they saw that it wasn't a one-time experience, or they had participated in some of our educational sessions that we've been hosting. And it's kind of pushed them to a point where they're ready to have a conversation. And maybe it's not always in an open space, maybe it's one-on-one, but when they came to it on their own, they were more willing to listen and learn. But that continual making them aware and giving them education kind of helped moving them toward that space.
I've got a question from the audience. Somebody asks, Tommy and Brad, how did you develop your working together styles with each other?
I'll start on that one. We had a situation. So I'm the construction executive on the on the data center job up north. We got 1,500 workers on site, and we had a graffiti incident on the job site. It was posted all over the newspapers, all over the news. We shut the job site down, and we reached out to Tommy. Our company had formed a relationship with Tommy actually like 2 days before I reached out to him and said, hey, we've got a situation. I've got to put on this training class on anti-racism. I really don't know what I'm getting myself into. I need help. Tommy dropped what he was doing and made his way up to the job site. In the course of about, if I remember right, Tommy, it was about 6 hours. We trained 700 workers in multiple different sessions, 1 hour at a time. And him and I stood up there and spent a lot of time together. I didn't know a lot of the education, so when I talk about education, we've talked today about Juneteenth on several of the other videos I listened to. The water gun play that was the very first one I watched today. I continued to hear Tommy and several of the Black workers on the job site talk about the conversation that fathers and mothers had with their Black young men in the household. But the first time I heard it, I looked at Tommy and said, "Is that real?" And as the day went on, it became very, very real that I was raised in a poor household, but never had any of the situations and issues and things that Tommy did, and that wasn't poor, middle class. Tommy educated me. I see a different side of a lot of the Black coworkers that I have out there now from a lot of that education. And him and I just hit it off and became friends, and I like to reach out to him and get as much education as I can.
No, Brad, I think you're spot on. The relationship with Brad and I, in my opinion, was very easy. One thing that attracted me to him was his authenticity, either not knowing and wanting to know, and then also knowing what he did know. And so Brad, much like many other people, they really know their own experience, their lived experiences, unapologetically. Sure, we may have made some missteps and mistakes, but with Brad, first, I felt a kindred spirit, which is very important. And that was that humanity spirit. And then secondly, I believe we had a common goal, right? Not only between he and I and the work that we were doing, but also with the organization. The common goal was to reduce, if not eliminate, racism. And we were, through the grace of timing, we were on the same path, moving in the same direction, and we were lock and step with one another. And then the other was that because of the energy, if you will, the energy of our time together with our audience, our employees, etc., that failure was not an option. The failure in our relationship was not an option. The failure to not communicate that there will be no racism in the environment. It would not be tolerated, discrimination, etc. And that really set the expectation, not only for our relationship as we were kind of going down the path together, but also I was learning directly from Brad as well. His cadence of his voice and his energy, his ability to be very brief in sharing information, and then having that information just land on people and let them sit in it. I thought that was an incredible skill. So I was sitting back kind of in the bushes, if you will, just admiring, this is a person that I haven't known very long, but this is the moment where I have a new friend, if not a new brother, right? I can sincerely say that. And so that's why I think the relationship and the partnership has worked very, very well.
Totally agree, brother.
I want to shift the conversation to specifically talking about kids, right? And I know all of you are parents, and so before we get into kind of broader talking about kids in general, I'd love to talk about the way that you talk to your own children, right? Brad, you already alluded to feeling like the conversations that you had earlier in your life with your children were not the conversations that you wish you had had, and that you want to have those conversations differently. So I'd love to hear from all three of you just on the conversations you have with your kids throughout their entire lives, and then especially now.
Vanessa, did you want to share?
I absolutely will. Well, I have two daughters. They are now currently alumni of Tennessee State University, historically Black college university, and very proud mom. I always took the approach that I need to consistently talk to them about where they come from and who they are and know their history. Very early on, from my parents, my grandparents went to North Carolina, A&T, education was very, very strong in our family. And it was always taught to us that we must know our history, because when you know who you are, you're going to stand up and no one will define you. So I knew very early on that education, knowing Black history outside of what's taught in the school, was going to be very important to my daughters. However, as good as I thought as much as I thought I had taught my daughters, it wasn't until my daughter went to Tennessee State and she minored in Africana Studies. And she said, "Mom, you taught it from a different perspective, right?" There was a whole different, deeper dive, into our culture, into our history. And so it was at that point, even as an adult, that I said, "Well, you still have a lot to learn, lady." But from very early on, I sat down with my girls. We watched, we learned, we went to go visit, we traveled, we tried to see as much as we could see, especially as relates to our heritage. But I'm a firm believer that everyone should get to know their history, because once you know who you are, you can stand firm. And then you're more open to diversity and learning more about other cultures. But you got to have a strong foundation. And I'll say that to every youth that's out there listening to the sound of our voice: know your history. Be proud of your ancestors. Wrap your brain around every little piece of article, video, YouTube, whatever you can get your hands on. Absorb it, learn it. And to parents, I say jump in and teach it. And then also teach teach about other ethnicities and cultures and diversity. Take it upon yourself, because it's not in the history books, right?
And Vanessa, you just touched on something. You just touched on something that's amazing to me, is what is lacking in the history books. And as we went through that education and started learning, there's a lot of things that they teach in Black history. And we asked all 700 workers, "What did you learn in Black history?" And it was the same stuff. It was Martin Luther King. Very, very few things they learn in Black history during Black History Month that you do from kindergarten up through 12th grade, and they don't teach a lot. You've got to step back and look at it and try and do the research. As a parent, I didn't necessarily ignore the conversation. We just didn't have the conversation. Just wasn't a conversation wasn't a subject matter, wasn't something we talked about. Since all of this has started happening, since the relationship I've built with Tommy and what we've been doing, we've had the conversation quite a bit in the household. And I've been honest, directed it head on. I didn't try and, a lot of the toughest conversations you have in your life, you try and tiptoe around. I've avoided tiptoeing around these conversations. We hit them head on. But then I sat back and listened to my 3 young girls and listened to their response and what they want to talk about. And we guide the conversation toward the direction they want to go.
That's outstanding. I enjoy listening to Brad and Vanessa. My wife and I, we have a blended family. And so we have 4 boys, 3 adult boys or 3 adult men, and then 1 young man who's 14. The 3 adult men, they have 3 children of themselves, and the mothers of their children are Caucasian white, Hispanic or Latina, and Asian. And so my son, who is African American, we have talked about what it means to be Black very early on. The same lessons that my parents shared with me outside of school in formal learning, I instilled and shared with my son, Bryce, who is African American. And then as we're talking to our grandchildren who are biracial and multiracial, we instill in them to understand the history of all of their identity, their racial identity. So not only their African American identity, but also their Caucasian identity and their Asian and Hispanic identity. So that's very important, as Vanessa said, to to be rooted in the, what we like to call the historical biography, right? What is the history of your identity by way of a racial identity? And then also, and finally, we've had to have the talk, right? From different lenses, having to talk to the African American children in our family is a little bit different than our multiracial grandchildren who actually could pass to be white. And so they are in some circles where there are not many people of color. They may be the only. And so they're getting some education from a social side as well as academically that is not the lived experiences of a African American. So those are some of the things I teach my children, is that one, you have your identity. Two, that if there is some form of racism, do not generalize the act of one person or a small group of people for an entire racial identity, right? That is unfair. That is unfair. Just like the stereotypes and biases that some people who don't know may have about African Americans, right? Like being lazy, being late, right? Very demonstrative in their communication. And my son Bryce, who's 14, he's very even keel, right? It's like, Bryce, come on, get excited. I am, Dad. Like, come on, man. Is that it? So I have to learn how to talk to my children differently about the topic of race and racism.
Thanks. Yeah, Brad, I want to follow up specifically with you. Just however much you're willing to share right now about the kinds of questions that your kids are asking, and what you think about. We were talking about just being really open and honest with them. I think there are probably a lot of white folks tuning in right now, some of whom may have not had conversations with their kids yet, specifically about race, right? The privilege to not have those things come up in your home exists very strongly in a whole lot of households. And I'm just wondering if you've got any just advice for people who are starting to think about these things, who may have watched the plays and want to dive in a little deeper with their kids, the questions you start with or the things that your kids bring up.
I don't know that it was so much as questions as them questioning some of the stories that I would start telling them. A lot of things that I learned from this educational series that we went through. Our company just put on a 21-day anti-racism education program where once a day for 21 days, they send out a link to a video or a educational series or something that you'd talk about things like Juneteenth. You'd talk about the fact, the GI Bill, and I'm a proud American veteran. The fact that World War II, the GI Bill paid for the white American soldiers when they came back, but specifically would not pay for certain aspects of that for the black soldiers as they came back. So we'd start talking about those, and the kids my children wouldn't believe it. So they would start asking questions about why, and we would do a little bit of research on Google. So I think you've heard all three of us talk today about educate yourself. The most important thing that the adults on this viewing today can do is go back and try and study. And Tommy, you probably have a couple of good resources that you could point people to that talk about things like the Black Wall Street and some of the stuff that we learned at 40 Acres and a Mule. Some of the stuff that we talked about in those training sessions where people could go back and find it. I think that would be the first step. We also, I realized afterwards, my daughters go to school with about a 30% Black population, but when they have friends over, there's no people of color in their friend group. And as I started asking questions, they just didn't run around, just didn't do the same things. So we started diving into just the why and being inquisitive. So there is no silver bullet. I don't have the answer. Be open, be honest. Our CEO said this is the most important work we're going to do in our careers. And I realize now it's probably the most important work I'm going to do as a father, working with my kids.
Thanks. And CATCO has put a bunch of resources up on our website on the landing page for the play. So it's at catco.org/Idris Goodwin. And so when you access these plays, you can also click on a bunch of resources there. There's a wealth of information out there in the world. Tommy, if you take a look at that and you see there's anything missing, I'm happy to add anything you think we should stick up on there. I know as we were working on this at CATCO, we were really selective about keeping things kid specific and just giving people just a sampling of the many work that's out there. I'm so grateful to all of the people who have been putting that together. So that's out there for people looking for resources. And Brad, I love you just mentioning Google it, right? There's a lot of, we have all the information at our fingertips. We've got to get better as a country about, figuring out what we feel is accurate and real and what we trust. But there's a whole lot of information out there. And so there's really no reason to not know the answer. It's great to be honest that when we don't know the answer, and then we can go find out and educate ourselves about it. I want to just touch on the intersection here of gender and race. I know that specifically with the Water Gun song and that production, Chanel Marie, who directed it, and I had a conversation about how gender plays in to that specific situation, right? And you've got a parent, the playwright. I think every single character in the plays that we've done so far today was written to be played by any gender. And so the directors were really in charge of thinking about, we auditioned people of many genders and figuring out what those characters' gender identity might be. So I'd just be curious to hear, as parents raising kids, how gender comes into play when you think about issues of race. I know specifically with the Water Gun song this morning, we had a young woman playing that part. We're seeing more and more Black women murdered by police. We are seeing more so Black men murdered by police, and just how gender can be a part of those conversations.
Sure, I'll hop in. For me, gender and having the conversation, especially with the police, I've had to have the same conversations with my daughters as many folks have had to have with their African-American sons. I tell them to do the same things, practice the same safety mechanisms if they get pulled over, because like you said, there's incidents where there are women facing the brutality, right? So it hasn't been a separate conversation, like, because I have daughters, I'm not going to have that conversation. Just as a Black American, you have to have these conversations. There's been other conversations that I've had to have with my daughters as it relates to being African American, is being your authentic self, right? It's okay to wear your hair natural. It's okay to be yourself and show up like you want to show up. And if someone has a problem with that, that's their problem. So those are the conversations that I had to have with my daughters, is really being your authentic self, embracing your beauty. Being in a school system where there weren't many Black girls in their classes, they had to embrace their beauty, right? And understand that there's a difference in each and every race, and it's okay. And so making sure that they were aware and that they were okay with embracing themselves.
I would add that, and I think this is a very interesting question, very good question, and I'll answer it in two ways. One, I do think that the struggles of Black women has historically been devalued. In other words, with regards to any societal effort, let's just take one, for example, the suffrage movement and the right to vote. Black women were segregated out of the suffrage movement. And so we can go down every effort to bring some equality, especially from a racial perspective, and the Black woman, unfortunately, is that is the last entity, a last group to be recognized and valued. Until that they are seen to be of value, then there's a lot of attention to them. The other part of that is that what I've found, my wife is an African American. She's of a particular age and season in her life that she's lived a long life and continues to live a long life. And most recently, just 3 weeks ago, she was pulled over by a police officer. There was a little bit of a fender bender, and she called me from her phone in hysterics that the police officers were approaching her as if she was a criminal, and she had never experienced this in her life. Since then, we've had the opportunity to talk to young women, African American in particular, and I can sense and hear in my wife how she was teaching and working with the young Black girls, some of that hurt. So I would say that as a Black man, I have been hurt by false accusations and name calling and things like that. And I have to sometimes temper myself, as my wife was working through, in not transferring my own pain into my children's pain or any other Black child's life, not their pain. And so what that means is I want to be authentic, but also want to be very clear that it's not fair and easy out here. Black man, here's what's going to happen with you. The potential that's going to happen. Black women, it can be even worse, just not as overt, just subtly. From employment to job advancement to opportunities to lead in civic and nonprofit organizations, you will be looked over time and time and time again, and to be asked for different credentials, more degrees, more experience, right? Can you really relate to folks there? Are you angry or are you aggressive? And all of the stereotypes that comes with those words. It's a tough question. I know I'm sharing, but I don't know. I really don't know. It's just, yeah, thanks for that question. Right. Thanks. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think, I think too, like speaking as a white woman, I know sometimes, right, we can all think about our identities and the ways in which, because of class or gender or race or sexual orientation, the world has not felt fair to us. And sometimes those conversations can overpower the racial conversation. And that's really dangerous, and something I know I'm personally trying to fight all the time. Right, the tyranny of white women feeling really oppressed and then forgetting about oppression of so many other groups, and especially the Black community. And so, as we think about the different experiences of, I think somebody at the beginning of this call was talking about owning your identity, right? Knowing who you are, knowing what identity is important to you, thinking about the identities that everyone can tell when you walk into the room, and the identities that come out in deeper conversation. And I think it's important for all of us to celebrate those identities in kids, so that we can celebrate difference, which leads me to kind of, we'll have time in a second just for some wrap up comments, but I want to just leave people with this question Brad, going back to you about not seeing color. Yep. I think that there was a time in which a lot of education on this issue said, right, being colorblind is a good thing. In the theater, we had colorblind casting, which meant, right, we did plays where the characters were like probably written to be white, but we put some Black people in the play, and we all applauded ourselves for not seeing color. The word color conscious casting in theater has come up more, that thinks about how somebody's race, how somebody's ethnicity on stage shares in that story. And so I think as all of us are thinking about that when it comes to kids, there are people out there who are nervous about talking about race with their kids, because they would love their kids to live in a world where the social construct of race was not loud, right? Where race was not on everybody's minds, where we could all feel equal. So what do you say to parents or kids who are feeling scared to even think about things along racial lines?
I'll jump in first, and then Tommy, clean up whatever I mess up here. It's hard to be anti-racist or be empathetic without seeing color. You can't go out and try and make the change that we're talking about on all of the videos today, and try and be the change that we want to see in the world without seeing color. Things aren't going to get better if we don't see it. I've been working on it at the company, a anti-politics policy that's going to go into place the week before the election and the week after the election. Nobody's going to talk about anything. And a comment that's come up a couple of times that I heard through COVID and I heard again now was, we're all in this together. Well, it struck me on one of those calls that we're not all in this together. It's different. It's a lot different for the impoverished communities than it is for the communities that are still working. It's a lot different for the Black communities than it is some of the white communities. If you don't see color, there's no way we can make the change that we need to make.
Yeah, Brad, I think you're spot on. Again, our racial identity for some is very important, just like gender identity is very important, and just like any other part of identity. But the opportunity that we have in front of us, that I would say racial identity is absolutely okay. That's coming from me. But racism is not okay. To project one's bias and have power over another person or people based on their race, I don't think it's right. Right? I don't think that from a morale perspective, it's good. Now, sure, we can create curriculum and training and context and maybe even artistic expression of the lived experiences of human beings and have it to be colorblind so that so people don't focus on the messenger and focus on the message. I agree with that, right? At the same time, we have to have some grace with the audience that they may not still be able to see past the color. And a default is color blindness, right? A woman may say, I'm a woman, I don't see gender. What? You don't? Right. You know that I'm this. I don't see that. You know what? You're invisible. That is what we call a microaggression. It's a micro invalidation. And from a racial perspective, owning one's identity, maybe even taking that challenge to learn others' identity, right? And what is the lived experience in general from white women, women who are Hispanic, Latino, immigrant women who are not from this country, because everyone doesn't think the same. They don't come from the same background. They don't have the same racial construct, social construct. And so education, as Brad said, and Vanessa, education is key, but it has to be the right education, right? And what that means is with data, because sometimes we can educate kids to be racist. That's where it comes from. No child is born in this world with those biases. Because at the end of the day, children, especially our young kiddos, they simply want to have fun with whomever wants to have fun. It is the adults that say, can't have fun with those people, can't have fun with that type or that kind. And the kids are like, why? I don't know why, but my grandparents said we couldn't, right? We have to break that cycle of racism, right? And that's why I enjoy about my relationship and friendship with Brad, right? Just, hey, say what's on your heart. It's in love. Everything we say is in love. It's in respect. It's in the vein of learning. If we disagree, sure. Otherwise, at the end of the conversation, are we better people? Yes. Black man, black woman, white woman, child, it doesn't matter, if you will. Now I have my identity. We're moving toward the same type of outcome. Right.
Vanessa, anything you want to add on that?
No, actually, they both said it so well.
Great.
Can't add any more to that.
We got someone in the chat just said, reminds you of the song from South Pacific, "You've Got to Be Carefully Taught." I know the great Audra McDonald
Yes.
in concert sometimes will include that in her concerts and think about, right, the way that we have to teach children racism, so we have to teach them anti-racism because that's the world that we all live in. Great. Well, we've got the premiere of #Matter coming up at 5:30. So anything any of you want to add before we wrap up here?
I would add very quickly, if you don't mind, Vanessa and Brad, to our kids, that regardless of what we're experiencing today or even in yesteryear with regards to race and maybe even racial tensions, I personally believe that you are the future. You're the better world that we're all hoping for. That you have access to people different than we had, because our communities was much smaller. We didn't have the opportunity to see different people via electronic or the internet platform. And so your world is both big and small at the same time. I would invite and encourage you to really challenge yourself to make your colleagues and friends and families even better anti-racist, right? If you're 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, the power of your voice is enormous. Use it, and use it well, use it often. You do have the power, young people, you do.
Great, that's fantastic. I think with that, we'll end this conversation. Thank you so much, the three of you, for sharing your time, your talents, your thoughts on the world with us, and for just having such an open, free-flowing conversation. I hope this is inspiring to everybody watching about the conversations that they can go on to have in their communities. So for those of you who have just tuned in, you are getting ready for the premiere of #Matter, the final play in our 4-play series. That show is at 5:30 tonight. After that, we'll have a talk back with the artists who made #Matter. And then at 6 p.m., we're going to gather the full cast and crew of all 4 plays together on one Zoom call for a continuation of these ideas and a celebration of our work here today. So that's coming up at 5:30, and then the celebration is again at 6. If you missed the 3 plays this morning, #Matter is recommended for people ages 14 and up. If you missed the 3 plays this morning, and especially if you have young people in your lives who are under 14, I really encourage you to check out those 3 productions, The Water Gun Song, Act Free, and Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth. They are now up on CATCO's website. They are free to share, so please send them to anybody that you think might want to give those a view and have those be the jumping off point for conversations like this one. Thank you so much to the 3 of you for being here, and I look forward to talking to you later.
We lived next door to each other as kids.
Now, same city.
We were never that close during any of it, but we knew each other.
I would see him here and there.
We were aware of one another.
We kept our space, not consciously. We just ran in different spaces.
But we were always aware. Social war.
Another body, another name, another image has circulated. The latest body, name, the newest image to haunt.
It's shameful.
I posted.
I liked it. Liked it.
And then I typed a hashtag in 3 words. Words I thought anyone could get behind.
I didn't quite like that. So I typed a hashtag and 3 little words. Nothing offensive. Something I thought everyone could get behind.
I didn't quite like that, so I deleted it.
She deleted my response. Totally hypocritical.
My wall, my space. Yeah, I edited it. It's the one space where I can build the world I'd like to inhabit.
I respond to her posts a lot. We share the same algorithm politically.
My response was to remove it.
Erasure is never okay. So I responded.
I responded, "Are you crazy?"
I responded, "We're talking about equality. The human experience, no time for stark divisions along racial lines. This is a time for us to recognize our shared humanity."
I deleted it.
I messaged her.
He messaged me.
Hey Kim, I know it's been a while.
He felt like we needed to talk, needed to clear the air.
Can we sit down for coffee sometime? Sitting down.
I want to ask you what you meant, but I'm finding it hard to ask you. What I would rather do is just tell you what I think about what I thought.
I explained what I meant.
I am sure you can explain, but can you explain what I read and what I took it to mean?
I just meant that we're all comprised of matter. Matter is the essential element of which we are all built. Just ordinary matter, like trees or water, solids and liquids.
And sound, the voice, for example, was not always considered matter. Matter used to only encompass a select set of solid objects.
But all along, it was all matter.
What happens to matter split? Does it explode and decimate millions of bodies of color? And whose hand split that matter? What we are talking about is Black lives split, shaken until they become bombs.
Their lives, those lives, it's all ridiculous. We're here. We get to decide how this is going to go. It doesn't have to, it shouldn't be. We don't have to ascribe.
An aside, there was the summer after our senior year of high school. We were both short on credits. All our friends took off. We had to stick around. We both ended up working at the library for extra cash. We got kind of close that summer. We talked about books, smoked joints on the lunch break. That was the summer I got into R&B and turned her on to some indie rock. I thought, man, what a cool chick. And there was one night after our shift, we got those tall cans and decided to break into the school. We heard someone, so we ducked into the only open room we could find, the chemistry room. It was dark in there. We were super quiet. We drank more and started to get close. Maybe it was because things were coming to an end. We got close, but we didn't. She stopped suddenly and said she had to go home.
We're on the same side, Kim.
Are we?
Yes, we want the same things.
After another man is lying in the street, your immediate impulse is to correct me, to talk semantics with me, to say, well, actually, Kim, I don't know what side that is. And aside, in particle physics, antimatter is material composed of antiparticles, which have the same mass as particles of ordinary matter, but have an opposite charge.
I don't believe anyone is less, or more, or special.
When we say Black Lives Matter, Do you think that's us saying we're special? Look at us. We're getting shot.
No, but it does sort of make your suffering worse than others.
Wait, what did you just?
That's not what I mean. It's saying that your suffering is okay, but what about Africa? All the Boko Haram stuff, or women, all over the world being assaulted, or gays and lesbians, Hispanics being deported, shot at border crossings, or hell, even poor white folks who live in Black communities who are
cold
for the crimes of others. And I am all for civil rights, but looting?
No.
And just
no.
It doesn't work.
You don't.
Strategic. All lives, Kim. That's all I'm saying. Now, let's pull the act from the context of race. We have to get to the root, human wickedness.
And sometimes humans kill humans because of their race.
Wouldn't it be great if we could... I just wish we could move on. Be ourselves, be individuals, just be our own perfect stars. Just be our own perfect stars. Look, remember when we were kids? We'd have a block party. All the kids would be out. We would get our faces painted like Spider-Man. Bike races. We were just kids in the neighborhood. When did we start?
I was the only Black kid at that block party.
I didn't see it that way.
You didn't see I was Black?
I didn't treat you different.
Everyone wasn't like you.
An aside. She wasn't always like this?
An aside. I was silent. I used to be silent.
She used to be real easygoing. A cool chick.
I used to hold my breath. Breathe shallow. Up here in my chest.
We grew up the same way.
But the way we were perceived is different.
That doesn't mean those perceptions are real.
The water and the tree are in the same forest, but are not the same. Different mass, different volume, different uses. Are you willing to decrease your mass? Just say it. Black lives matter.
Do white lives not matter?
No one is saying what doesn't matter.
But it's exclusionary.
It's contextual. In this climate, it relates to the splitting of Black atoms with no consequence.
An aside.
I really want to leave. I feel sick. I want to hug Kim and tell her I'm sorry. But also, if I'm being honest, tell her to get over it. Life is hard. There's no measuring stick for suffering. She can change this just by being herself, not this angry Black woman.
An aside. I really want to let Cole off the hook. Drop this whole thing, tell him it's all good. But I have swallowed myself so many times to make white folks feel less uncomfortable.
I want to tell her I'm sorry.
I don't need apologies. I just want it to stop.
To say it is to admit that my life, in someone's eyes, someone living, someone dead, has mattered more than other folks. And I don't think it does. But someone at some point has believed that. Maybe my life has been better because of that.
That night in the chemistry room, when we got close, Cole and I, all those years ago, I was into it. I liked him. Until he put his hands in my hair. And I thought about all those kids in school always asking to touch it. Can I touch it? And how they would react when they did. And he has his hands in my hair
And I wonder how he thought it felt. Weird? Funny? Good? Then I thought about if he had been with any black girls before, and that was too much. So I told him I had to go home. So I did. I left. And that was the closest we ever got.
A week or two later, I sent Kim a message. I thanked her for the conversation. I told her we should be in touch more often, that I wanted to keep talking, not just about this, but our lives in general. Nothing. That was that, I thought. But one morning I went on my timeline. I saw her picture and name being shared by everyone. They called it a failure to comply. A failure to be silent. So they made her silent. Forever. She lives on now as a hashtag. But I still hear her voice hanging in the particles. Does the spirit have mass? It must. I can still feel her weight.
Too many songs unsung, too many dreams undone, too many times I have to say my skin is not a crime, too many lies being fed, too many tears being shed, too many times we close our eyes, shut our mouth, turn our head. I hope and I pray tomorrow's a better day from this road that we're on.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and watching this beautiful play, #Matter. For those of you who are just joining us, my name's Lita, and I'm CATCO's artistic director. I'm here with actors Philip Hickman and Lori Lindsay, and the director of #Matter, David S. Harewood. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
Great. So everyone's just watched this play. I'm sure people are digesting and thinking about what they've just seen. I'd love to start off while people start to put their questions in the chat on YouTube. I'd love to start off with the three of you, just hearing about what surprised you working on this play, things that this play brought up, especially as you started to collaborate and work together, the three of you.
I mean, I think for me, a lot of it was about not rehashing the moments leading up to the summer of 2020, but like remembering where we were at that point in the conversation 3 years ago that has changed and become far more immediate and pressing in the last several months. These murders have gone on for years. And the conversation about language was still relatively philosophic 5 years ago. Whereas now it's a very clear line, and having that, like reliving that conversation, that's to me what was both challenging and frightening about it. And I think, Lori, you and I talked about some of that too, right? From the fatigue of it.
Yes. Think about the fact that this play or this short was written in 2017, and yet it is still very, very relevant today. Maybe it's shifted a little bit here and there, but it becomes exhausting, to be quite honest. It becomes exhausting to talk about the same thing, to basically be screaming at the top of your lungs, not to be treated special or not to be looked upon as being special, but for protection, for not only empathy, but also sympathy. So yeah, so in some sense, is it surprising? Yes and no. I'm glad we have the opportunity to use art to kind of start the conversation and have shared experiences around it. But it can be very exhausting, or at least feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I was early on in the uprising here. I was documenting, was video streaming at first. And when it got heated, there was a discussion of like exposing trauma rather than like showing people this is, I mean, I was doing it to say, no, this is actually legitimately happening. They're talking about secondary and tertiary problems when like this is what's happening right now. But going through this piece felt kind of like that because it was, you know, I lost count after Eric Garner. Somewhere around there. There was a memory of Tyree King, but like that wasn't cut and dry. That was here, right? But like I lost count around 2017, 2018. And going back to those thoughts of, okay, yeah, there was always some sort of great pain going on across the world, but you know, Trayvon had been shot, what, 9 years before that? So like we'd already been dealing with all of this for years. Not to mention LA, not to mention Cincinnati in 2001. Like it's just, they're all back to back to back to back. And having that conversation about like whether or not, you know, there's the line about Black Lives Split, having that conversation in that way 5 years ago, 3 years ago, we could still have it and have it be some sort of abstract thing, whereas it's no longer close to abstract now.
Kenny, who directed Nothing Rhymes with Juneteenth, has asked a question in the chat. For the actors, how much did personal experience inform your choices in the piece? I guess a different way to phrase that too would just be like, how do you as actors think about connecting the things you know from the world around you or things that have happened directly to you to your work? Right? Where do you draw those lines? Where do you draw upon those ideas?
Well, I can talk. I definitely related to Kim in some ways. I've definitely been that girl that's been asked, you know, can I touch your hair? Not only as a child, but also as an adult. And some of the same feelings that that was written within the script, I've had in those experiences. So you definitely draw upon, if you can, whenever you can, draw upon those personal experiences to bring life to the writing, to bring life to the character. So definitely in that moment, in particular, I was like, yeah, I've been Kim before in that situation. How did it feel? You know, and what can I do with this particular scene or this line to try to portray that?
Yeah. I think for myself, kind of similarly, there's both the personal internal experience of, you know, growing up, being taught racist ideas, like holding racist thoughts for years without really being checked about it, kind of coming face to face with everything that, like everything that Cole expresses is more about a fear of losing position
of losing some sense of safety in a caste system than it is really about empathy. And, that's heartbreakingly familiar, both from just the, from myself. These problems are in myself. And these problems exist in people around me in ways that never really get examined.
And how is it having that version of that conversation from your perspective now, as opposed to when it was written? Does that inform any difference in how you approached any of the material?
I tried to kind of roll things back to a few years ago when the, what lives matter conversation was more of a discussion, quote unquote, and not just hate Cole for still being where he's at now, when that isn't what the script is really talking about exactly.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think, Philip, like Cole is you're the only white actor, and Cole's the only white character in all 4 plays that we've seen today. And
Thanks, Philip.
It's a role that, like, I'm glad that in this series, actually, like, there is this one white person who is just at the beginning, really, it feels like, of starting to think about what the Black experience in America actually is. And I know, David, like you and I have been talking a lot about what is the audience for this piece. And I know that all of us are hoping that, a bunch of people in Central Ohio of all races, and hopefully across the country, are tuning in and watching these plays. But it's also really important that, like, white folks step up and be anti-racist and make change in their communities. And so, I don't know, just thinking about that's, we kind of have this one voice in Cole.
There was a discussion earlier about the attempt at color blindness that was that glorious lie that was sold to us throughout the 90s and aughts, where a lot of us, like, cut our teeth, right? And how the notion of anti-racist versus non-racist behavior, thought patterns, mindsets has a more visceral connection now than it has in years. And I think watching, there are still people who, there's been this discussion recently that, if a third party exists, it will be a centrist party, right? And there are still these people who, like, I'm going to be Switzerland here. I'm going to be objective. Well, objectivity is there's that special place in hell for those who are trying to be neutral or objective now. Whereas you could get away with that almost years ago. And I am sure that there's still people, because I've spoken with them more frequently than I would care to admit, that are still in that sort of space. And I think this piece particularly, it forces you to make that decision. And it's also the only one that, like, deals with adults talking to other adults about these things too, which I think is interesting for kind of a family-oriented series of pieces.
Someone in the chat has written, yes, do you think that Cole represents where most people are today? All right, and I think, David, going along what you said about this centrist viewpoint, I don't know, does it feel like people that you're interacting with are people in the world? Do you have anything kind of to add to the conversation about where it feels like the world is at, especially as it relates to this all lives matter idea where it feels like this Black Lives Matter statement threatens the world like that?
The Vice President of the United States in March or April was asked the question. He was asked to say those 3 words, Black Lives Matter, and he looked at the interviewer and said, all lives matter, full stop. There was an anti-mask rally in July of this year, mid-July of this year, where for the last hour or so, they gave the anti-mask people gave Proud Boys the megaphone for the last hour. And the chant cycled among all lives matter to blue lives matter to white lives matter, while there was a guy behind them holding a sign promoting white history and saying that Black history was all a lie. So yeah, if you can have that conversation now, I don't know where you have been in the last 6 months. And God love him for still trying to hold on to that, but I just don't know how you can do that now. And I don't know anyone right now who's going to insult our collective intelligence by assuming that objectivity exists now. That's what's so interesting about this piece, because it feels like Idris
wrote this play also to like talk about language and the way that we can get so obsessed with the semantics about language, but also how much language can hurt when used incorrectly. And there's a question in the chat here too about this interesting approach, the conversation about the importance of words is about physics and science, and the way that Idris has put into the play these really big scientific ideas to talk about this all lives matter, Black lives matter, blue lives matter, white lives matter conversation that we're seeing. I don't know if anyone, if you want to talk about just sort of how you felt like the language of this piece changed the tone and the style of this conversation.
I'll share my thoughts on that. I thought it was very interesting to go the approach of science. But at the same time, and I think it was mentioned earlier in one of the talkbacks, you're not seeing it through your heart or from your heart. You're not seeing that other person or even the situation or a scenario from your heart. So we can talk about it from a scientific perspective. And again, I thought that was a very interesting approach and style within the writing itself. But at the end of the day, we need to see each other's heart in order to move forward with the conversation, with our mindset, with behavior, and how we live in this world together.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that was kind of bouncing between the science take and like the language take was Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, where she's talking about whiteness being a class status, not some kind of a real thing. And so I've been in thinking about like the science and like Cole doing all this, like, let's get down to like hard science facts or whatever. It's like, yeah, hard science facts. Whiteness is a privileged status that quote unquote white people allow other people in as long as it's not going to threaten their status within the caste system. And I feel like just kind of rolling back to the previous question as well, like what Cole is, I do think that a lot of people get stumped when they try to demonstrate radical empathy because they cannot give up the position of being a slightly higher caste than someone else, not because they really want to lord it over anybody, but because they're afraid of being at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And
they've spent so long fooling themselves into thinking that the caste system doesn't exist because they're at the top of it.
Yeah.
Like that has been, I think, a key part of why that conversation was allowed to continue for as long as it did. And we collectively just sort of accepted it. It's as exhausting as we knew it was going to be. But
I would suggest anyone who is watching this who is a person who has been accounted as white for your whole life and had the privileges afforded to being persons who are white, every time somebody asks you to, identify yourself by race, mark out white every time you see it and write European American in its place, and just little bits of identity will start to help have that separation of conversation.
I've got one last question. We got a bunch of people in the waiting room ready for our opening night celebration. But I've got one last question, Lori, from the chat. The question is, Lori, can you speak about the burden of Kim having to carry the burden to educate? Right, so often this, like, Kim is, yet another person who's saying, "Oh, you're Black. Tell me about being Black."
Yeah. If I could use the word exhausting again, I will. It can feel and be very exhausting. But at the same time, when you get to a position where you can kind of look beyond that, how you're feeling, and you see it as an opportunity to educate, an opportunity to share, even if it's just a little tidbit at that moment. I think it's beneficial. But yes, it can be very exhausting, because I know for myself, I definitely feel like it's always on me to educate. I have to help you see what the situation is. I know what it looks like from your perspective, but if you could just take one moment to maybe just shift your mindset or shift your eyes and look at it from this perspective. A lot of African Americans carry that burden, and yeah, it can be exhausting.
Yeah, it's come up a couple times today, right? The exhaustion of that burden, and also just how simple a lot of resources are that are out there. We were talking on the panel about Google it, right? Like, you got a question, to call your Black friend, you can also Google it, and read books and watch movies and experience the art that people have been creating, talking about these things for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think, I hope that, I'm so grateful to all of you who have made these plays, and now we can share them out into the world, and we can continue to share these works as additions to that conversation, and all of the various resources around here for people who've got lots and lots of questions. So we've got a bunch of people in our waiting room. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll be back with our opening night celebration momentarily. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy opening to this amazing team of people. Congratulations, everybody. So glad to be here. I think the last time that all of us were together was our first rehearsal, and then everyone split up into 4 different groups, rehearsed the plays. We've just had a chance to see some of our different friends' work just today over the course of the day. So it's been really fun to see all of you supporting in the chat and joining together. So thanks so much for being here. I just want to say a huge congratulations from all of us at CATCO. And then I just wanted to spend the next half an hour celebrating our work and hearing from all of you who have had the chance today to see some of the other plays. Just hearing your responses to the plays that you didn't work on, things you saw, things you loved about them, things you're thinking about, things you hope people take away. No need to raise your hand. You can just unmute and start talking. We'll see how that goes.
I'll start. I watched every single one of the plays, and I thought it was great because we met each other at the beginning, and I didn't know about all the other plays. I didn't know what they were about. I just heard the names, and we broke off, and I did my stuff, and you guys did your stuff, and after watching it, I was like, these are amazing. Oh my gosh, you guys all did a great job, and I loved every single one, and they all brought a different story into the same element. We all talked about the same thing, but in different ways. And I think it was very important that we focus on that it was a different way of telling the same story. And I really loved every single one of the plays.
So thanks so much for being here. I just want to say a huge congratulations from all of us at CATCO. Who else? Anyone else want to jump in?
I'll say that I especially enjoyed just watching how everybody interpreted things, and because reading them and then seeing them come to life are two totally different things. The editing was neat too, to see those choices, and really looking forward to see the young people that are involved in this production as they continue in their theater journey to see where they'll go, because they're awesome. So I just want to say good job to everybody involved.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed by all the young people. I mean, I remember when we were auditioning everyone and how we were like, oh, there's so many good ones. Oh, how do I pick which one? And, and it's, hopefully once this COVID crap gets done and we can do something, we got to do something, because this was an amazing process. David, your film turned out to be wonderful. I remember
we were at the first meeting.
Lord. What'd you say, babe?
Well, we were at the first meeting, and Patty, you went, so David, are you doing a short film? And I said, well, we can't do theater, so why don't we do that? Like, I was, we've all been struggling to find a way to get stuff out, right? For months. And, this is an entirely different medium. So like watching us who we're used to being able to see the full frame. We're used to being able to see and feel bodies in front of us. And we can't do that right now. But there's been a learning curve that I think is coming up every month with these things. So it's cool to be a part of it, and to be a part that's, while still foreign, something that we can work with.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun watching the youngers, the more kid-centric shows, because usually I am terrified of them. But yeah, I agree with all of the other directors before me saying, I can't wait to see what these kids are doing. Yeah, it's been fun to watch.
It was great to watch all four of you directors, just the different ways you approach this virtual medium, right? Like, as we're all experimenting with what that looks like. It was really nice to see four totally different takes on what that can do. I also want to say, I think, Carter, you were mentioning that, these plays are all related to the same topic, but they're also very different. And I really appreciated the way that all of these plays in their own way deal with some very, very serious issues, some things that are really hard to talk about, some things that as actors and directors, you had to, put yourselves in that world, but then also the way that you were able to infuse joy in these pieces wherever you could, or at least connection, right? And the ability to communicate with people. And I think that's really important in this story.
I think kind of piggybacking on that, outside of, you know, the kind of interwoven subject matter in the different pieces, at the heart of all of the pieces that we did was the idea of relationship, and expressing that in different ways, whether that was like a parent and child relationship, whether that was the relationship between the three now 2 years old, 2 years longer than they should have been slaves, or the relationship between these two, you know, old friends who now are seeing themselves on different sides of the same subject. In the end, what makes these so accessible and so relatable, and what is great about the way that they were portrayed and the way that the act were able to get across what needed to be expressed pieces, is that relationship was kind of at the center and at the core of all of it, despite what the subject matter may be. And I think that sometimes, especially when you're speaking with someone whose views or opinions may be different than what yours are, we forget about how big a role relationship and humanity plays in having those conversations. It's really easy for me to timeline and see people who I've known for 10, 15 years and see them, you know, going up and down my timeline championing Trump, and then like questioning the last 15 years of relationship I've had with them. And I'm like, well, no, those 15 years still exist, and their position is still what it is. Those two things suddenly make one not real. They're not suddenly inhuman because of the fact that they hold a different position than I do. And I think that the way that these conversations were presented and the way that these relationships were presented, it shows you can have these kinds of conversations, and you can do it in a way that protects everyone's humanity and dignity.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Christy Farnbaugh. I'm CATCO's pretty new executive director. Lita and I are new together. You know, the word that keeps coming up for me is vulnerability. I feel like you all were vulnerable as creative people and actors and directors and stage managers to try this new world, this new virtual world. And I felt like the characters are vulnerable too, right? Our folks in the talkback were vulnerable. And I think that's one of the ways you can help us through the plays move forward, right? Is that we have to get vulnerable. We have to strip off kind of what we had been taught or what we thought we knew, and be open to new perspectives. So that's the word that has come up for me all afternoon.
Yeah, I've taken part in some discussion groups about diversity and how we need to work together and whatnot, and the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And one of the things that I know was brought up in one of the earlier discussions was, no, it was in the panel discussion, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's like nobody likes talking about this. It's hard. It's, you know, I remember sharing that I didn't become a Black activist until I got married. And the story that I shared was when my husband and I were dating, he would sometimes roll down the window and say, "Free Mandela." And I asked him, who the heck is Mandela? Boy, and
Wait,
he
what?
still married me. So yeah, yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So, you know, it's, I've done a lot of growing and becoming vocal. Not as vocal as you, David, or you, Kenny. I loved you guys' talkbacks. They were absolutely intriguing and enlightening and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that I can talk about, that I can say I'm a Black actress, and a part of me doesn't go, did you have to add the Black part, you know? or something. I'm becoming comfortable in my own skin. 60 years in, thank you, God, I'm comfortable in my own skin finally. And I can share that, like what Kim, Lori's character Kim talked about. I swallowed it for so long, and now it's like I'm tired of swallowing it. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're going to hear about it right now, whether you like it or not. I hope you're comfortable in your uncomfortableness. So,
I think
and I'm so glad to talk with adults. Nothing against you kids, but I'm glad to be talking with adults now.
I mean, we're all grappling with a reality that we didn't think was coming, right? And I think part of the beauty of the kind of feverish pace with which Idris wrote the first 3 plays in this series, in that month, was that we had all been, or many of us, have been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this and doing shows about it and running political campaigns. And there was still a very significant portion of our communities that were like, yeah, no, let's not go there. Where it's like, well, now we're already there, so we may as well be talking about it now because we've not.
I also want to give a shout out to the Heart of Protest initiative at the King Arts Complex. And for those of you who don't know, please Google it, go on to the Heart of Protest Initiative's website, and you'll see a bunch of art from a whole bunch of amazing Central Ohio artists in this 46 days of artistic protest. It's very intentionally been set. It started on Juneteenth and it ends on Election Day. And so as a part of the Heart of Protest initiative, I also want to ask everybody to please make sure that you vote. Vote with these anti-racist ideals in mind as you cast your ballot. If you need help making a plan, ask around, ask your friends, message CATCO. We've got lots of information on how to vote, how to make sure your vote counts. And if you can't vote yet, which is I think about half the people on this call, help the people in your lives vote, right? Check in with the people who are old enough to vote, make sure they've got a plan and that they've got the help that they need as well. So thinking about tomorrow, right, in this anti-racist tomorrow, I'd love to close just with either a word or a phrase that you want people to think about as we head into tomorrow, both literally Sunday when we wake up in the morning, and then the much bigger tomorrow. I think earlier today we were talking in the talkback dreaming about, 3027 or something like that. So what word or phrase do you want people to think about going into tomorrow?
My phrase would probably be, tomorrow is not close enough.
I think my word would probably be incomplete. We have a lot of work still to do. As proud as I am of the work that we're doing and the choices that we're making, we have so much to do. So I don't want anyone to get complacent in the amount of progress that's been made when the finish line is so far out ahead of where we are. So my word would be incomplete.
I'll go. What's coming to mind is engage and action that people should do, can do. Talked about comfort, getting out of your comfort zone. They say that, when you do, that's when the magic happens. It's uncomfortable to have these conversations. It's uncomfortable to talk to your kids about, sex. It's uncomfortable for a doctor to tell his patient, a particular diagnosis, but we have to have those conversations. We have to be engaged, and engaging is an action. So we need to take action.
I want to add to what Lori said. We can all do something. So I think a lot of times we can overthink about where we fit within all the stuff that's happening within the social uprising. We can all just do something, but don't do nothing.
I think mine would be keep going. It looks hard. It is hard. It's not going to be easy. But we have to keep going. We have to keep pushing. Carter's last line, maybe not soon, but it will be over if we keep going.
I would probably say compassion for my word.
There's a march that's going to happen on Wednesday after Election Day. We're demanding that our vote is counted because there have been so many suppression efforts across the state, across the country, especially in the last year. But the tagline from it was something that the Ohio Organizing Collaborative came up with, I think, that I've loved, and it's educate, agitate, organize. You have to know what's happening, and if you're okay with it, no, and then go out and do something about it.
Micah? You raising your hand? No. Okay. Preston, do you have a word or a phrase you want to share?
My word would be empathy.
Anyone else? These are all great ideas to go think about. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Happy opening, everybody. I know that a number of shows had a tradition of closing out rehearsal or filming with a dance party. So if you want to stay online, I'm going to play some music that will not get us shut down on YouTube, picked specially for this occasion. And we'll have a little dance party. Anything anyone wants to add before we go out with a little celebration? All right. Great, here we go. I'm going to play the music, dance along if you want. Thank you everybody for joining us. All 4 plays are now up on CATCO's website. Please share them, spread the word, share this amazing work.